How's that? Where is this?
And we're on.
We're on. Good morning, Danielle. I missed you.
I know, I missed you too. How was Rome?
Rome was great. You know what was great about Rome? Of course, Rome, it was meeting all those wonderful realtors from all over the world. You know what my opening salvo was when I gave a speech? I brought a mask of her, and I brought my Trump mask, which I left in Rome, and I said, I'm here from America to give you great news. If she's elected, half the people in the country are going to move out of the country, and some are going to buy houses in Europe. And if he's elected, half of the people are going to move out of America, and some are going to buy homes in Europe. And they all applauded. They want to know what the heck is going on in America. But we're not going to talk about politics. You know, my best trip, I had a 12-city road trip over 2 months to talk to Inman readers and customers, which get me all excited. And I'm not BSing. I really love to talk to them. Was Burlington, Vermont. I told Yaz when I got home late last night. She's in LA, warming it up. I was freezing. And I said, we're going to move to Burlington. And so it's a beautiful city. Burlington is a beautiful city. Anyway, great road trip. And we have two guests today. I think they've been on the road. They're on the road right now, Danielle, at a big Zillow happening. So introduce our guests.
So we have, you guys are at the Zillow conference, both of you. We have Philip Veranda and Leslie Ebersol joining us today. Hi, guys. How are you?
I am
not hungover.
Not the big part. I actually ended up not getting on the plane. Something came up. So Phil is going to have to be the Zillow guy. But last night was a big party. I saw lots of 55-year-old men dancing on tables, and it didn't look pretty.
Well, I wish I could say I saw the same thing, but I was asleep in my hotel room.
Grown-ups should not use Snapchat or Vine or anything else.
But they should dance, Leslie.
Just not post it on Facebook.
I'll take a picture of me dancing on Halloween, and you'll say, hey, that guy's over 60 and he can dance.
But you're cool. These guys aren't cool.
So let's zoom on one story. I think Danielle and I are both curious. And Danielle, you should weigh in too on this. The only non-expert here is Bradley Inman. But we do have three of the smartest people in the industry on this show. People are so lucky. And I have such respect for Phil and Leslie. So tell us this. Zillow announced something that we made a big deal about, which was they can now instantly buy you Facebook ads. And Phil, I was particularly interested in your angle about we're constantly getting questions at Connect and from our readers about, hey, how do I reach buyers in China or Manhattan or Montana or, you know, and it sounds like this may represent a pretty plug and play solution for targeting for those that don't know Facebook or how to use it.
That's exactly what it is. So we've been doing retargeting for several years, and a lot of people want to advertise their listings to a targeted audience, don't know how to do it. And this is kind of a basic way of creating the opportunity. So you can advertise your listing on Facebook to a targeted demographic, geographically, by income, by predictive analytics, such as likelihood to move in the next 6 months. Predictive analytics are a thing, I'm told. And there was a little pushback from people that also do the same thing, who are now having this encumber their, compete with them. And it is a good thing. There's no conspiracy. This does not resell your hard work to the 3 other agents that might be on your regular listing page, because it is a customized landing page. So a lot of the conspiracy stuff and doubt that I've seen on Inman in the comments might be a little bit unfounded, but it is a basic training wheel thing.
Some of our comments, they think Zillow is this.
Yeah. And when you come from that presupposition, you find evidence to support your thesis, don't you?
Exactly. But, we got a diverse audience of readership. A lot of people, were there that love what Zillow's doing. It's a pretty good thing. Leslie, what do you think of it, this retargeting? And Phil, I'd like to go back. I think some of our readers, we take it for granted that everyone retargets, but the fact is a lot of our readers don't know what that means or how to do it.
So that's the exact point. If you are a high production agent or a team leader or a small broker that doesn't have an IT director and doesn't have a media whiz on staff, you have to vend this out. There is no reason for a real estate agent to become expert in everything, because then they don't have time to go talk to people and sell real estate. So if you're buying Zillow advertising, this is just one more extension of it. And a lot of the website vendors have been doing it. You can buy their packages. You can buy it from Boomtown. You can buy it from Boston Logic. You can buy it from the Curator guys. This is normal. It's not a conspiracy.
Well, I think why those guys who are really savvy, smart guys got a little upset. Like, this isn't new. We've been doing this for you for a while, gang. Danielle, what do you think of it? Would you tell your agents to use retargeting and use Zillow in this way? Spend their money, their hard-earned money to do this?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious to see what the pricing is going to be. My zip codes in my area are super cheap compared to the rest of the country. So I saw the article mentioned like $1,000 a month. So I don't know if that would be something my agents would want to use, because that's a pretty good chunk of change for the sales price that we're doing on average. But I'm curious to see what the pricing is. But yeah, why not? I mean, that's kind of my motto with marketing and advertising is, if you blast yourself everywhere, you have a better chance of being found by somebody. Which I think is like a perfect segue right into the next article that we wanted to talk about, which is where these agents are spending money on advertising.
Yeah, that was a good story. What was your take on that? Do you think our readers are agents spending it smart? There's so many choices now. It makes me nervous that the pile on, how do realtors sort this out? It's crazy. And the amount of money that they're spending, $25 billion on advertising, my God.
Who wants to go first on that?
Why don't you?
I'm going first. I am in a back to basics mode. Phil knows that. I've been dogging Phil on it for about a year. I'm calling on agents right now to bake pies and hand deliver them to people. But putting that aside, some agents, if they've tapped out their ability to get their business from their sphere and their past clients and normal running around town, then they can start adding advertising. It's never a substitute, though, for doing the basics. So agents, we've all talked about it, the silver bullet. It's going to come easy. Somebody contacted me a few days ago about, well, I've got $500 a month and Zillow's calling. And I'm like, please don't. It's just not enough. It's not enough. I don't know about your zip code, Danielle. If you're big spending, then yeah. But make sure your basics are in place. Phil, you've been saying this for a year. You said it on stage at Inman last January.
Where do you spend your money? How do you split it up? How do you think about it?
Well, it's kind of unfair to ask a broker that, because I spend my money, the short answer is everywhere. I mean, I spend my money on SEO. I spend my money on pay-per-click. I spend my money on mailers, So it's basically like this. We never forgot that referrals are the best ROI. Yeah. They cost that much, okay? So when the background noise got so loud on pay-per-click and things of that nature, that we got crowded out and it stopped having the same kind of ROI that it had 3 or 4 years ago, then we started going back to basics. So yeah, the best ROI is on sphere of influence. So, client appreciation dinners, mailers, things that keep you in your sphere is probably the best ROI, and it can be the best ROI 50 years from now. As the cleverness of advertising evolves, there will be an undulating pattern to what becomes the flavor of the month and what doesn't become the flavor of the month. Right now, we're in between flavors of the month. Retargeting is now no longer a secret, and we may be entering, now that Zillow's entered the fray, a post-retargeting era.
So this is not to knock Zillow at all.
No.
Bricks Minneapolis we'll do close to $40 million in volume off of Zillow this year. So I'm not against that. I'm just saying it's, agents need to not do little bits. They need to not dribble their money. If you know what I mean by that, little here, never following through on anything. I want to pitch this for the whole next year. Buy marketing programs that match your strengths. If you're a networker and you get your business by taking the other women on your block to lunch, what are you doing messing around with Facebook ads? Maybe Facebook because it's more targeted, but buy to your strengths, right, Phil? When we're talking to all your agents, when you're talking to Peaches, you're buying to her strengths, not to, go buy a robo-dialer that to do expireds. She's not going to do business off of that.
Listen, one thing that I'm always asking, I'll ask Danielle this, I'm always amazed that you all don't, spend to an ROI. At my company, every dollar that goes out the door, there's an ROI. We probably throw away some money foolishly in some parties, but for the most part, everything that goes out the door is evaluated in ROI. Now, there is some kind of, the frivolous spend, but if you're not doing that, it seems to me if you bring it back to the math and measure return on investment, you just said sphere of influence, Phil. I mean, that's got to be high margin. That's like referrals coming to connect. That's the best registration I get. I don't spend any money to acquire that customer. Danielle, how do you think about it? Is everything measured, or is it more from your gut, which is kind of scary, I think?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously my dad is not big on fancy technology stuff. So that's interesting because it's hard for me to measure like what the team is, what we're doing and what we're getting from it. My big thing is, whenever somebody calls me or emails me, or if I'm going on a listing appointment, I always say, well, how did you hear about me? Obviously, if it's a personal referral, they say, oh, so-and-so told me to call you. But I kind of just try to keep track that way. And, I'm just going to say it. It's hilarious because everyone's always like, oh, the millennial does paper advertising. I mean, we advertise in the newspaper. We send out expired letters every single day. We do just sold postcards, and maybe it's just my area. I don't know, but they work.
We measure ROI. I think on any individual zip code on Realtor.com or Zillow, if a zip falls below 3 to 1, it's on the cut list. This will be easier when we go to auction pricing. But between 4 and 5 to 1 on a spend when you're running it at scale is really decent. I mean, we're running a big operation on it.
I will do that all day. Phil,
yeah,
how do you measure it?
So to your point, I mean, dispatch from the Zillow conference, you can't improve what you don't measure. So we're maniacal about looking at this sort of thing. However, big caveat, we're always doing A/B testing. So we're always doing trial and we're always doing error. So if you see error, it's not a frivolous spend necessarily. It is a let's see if this works. It is a calculated risk looking for the next thing to catapult us ahead.
And there's so many ways you can measure that, like on the IDX lead gen sites, like conversion or which one do you use, Phil? You use
conversion.
Okay, use conversion, Boomtown.
Boomtown, Tiger Leads, whatever.
When the on-screen capture begins to drop below a certain level, and I think it's going to be different for different areas, that's when you just start watching it every day and watching for your contract. I had one on-screen capture rate dropped really low for one of them, and I thought, I'm getting some, but it's not enough. The money could work a little bit harder. But remember, I'm not doing this. Phil's doing it as a broker. I'm doing it for the CMO, as a CMO of one business and team leader of another. So we're doing larger numbers. An individual agent, it's hard. Well, they shouldn't be spending this much money, probably.
Remember, if you do email marketing, do not delete your emails. Says Donald
Trump. Use a secure server.
Okay, gang. You know what's great about the baseball season? I don't know about all of you. My dad used to say this. He goes, Brad, you know how we got through the Depression? He said baseball. And the greatest thing about this World Series, and by the way, I'm off of what my team calls a Brad tangent, but what's great about this World Series is, for me, what a wonderful distraction from all this other nonsense. Not ROI, but the election. Anyway, Danielle, speaking of tension, I'm not sure we were speaking of tension, but speaking of tension in the industry, we had this lawsuit in San Diego. It's like, who cares in New York about a lawsuit in San Diego? Let me give you my quick take. To me, this is about, why is AT&T buying Time Warner? It's consolidation to survive. They're feeling disruption, digital disruption, and they're worried. And when big companies worry, they consolidate to get share to survive. I think what's going on in the MLS world is disruption is happening all around the MLS industry and all around the association industry. All these fiefdoms are being questioned finally. There's more transparency. They're being taken down. Mm-hmm. And to me, this is a movement out of fear, consolidation. Surprise, surprise, there's lawsuits. AT&T will probably get sued somewhere, by shareholders. There's tension, there's conflict. That's my big picture take. But does any of this really matter, to our everyday readers? I don't know. But any thoughts on these lawsuits over MLS associations and blah, blah, blah?
Brad, the one constant through the years has been lawsuits. That was said in my best James Earl Jones voice. NAR wants consolidation of associations. They do not want 50-person associations. They don't want 300-person associations. We just combined 3 associations 2 years ago in my market. And it was done basically for the survival of one of the smaller organizations and for the overall health of all 3. You can't force an association to merge. So I certainly understand if they want to maintain their identity, which was always the big pushback on our consolidation, which was they wanted to maintain their identity. That's why they're probably very upset. There is a financial component as well. On these things, you always follow the money. You cannot we're not the board. You cannot force them to consolidate. I think if they want to operate outside of the bigger group, they should be allowed to do so.
Yep.
So
I think you make a really good point. Leslie, any thoughts on these kind of lawsuits?
Yeah, lawsuits between partners are never a good sign, right? The move to leave Sandicor and join the growing statewide initiative, I think that's really interesting. California, how many people live in California now? 60 million, 50 million?
No, it's 40 million, isn't it?
Okay, but it's a big number.
Yeah, it's bigger
55 electoral votes.
So, the issue is not just buying server farms. It's are there legitimate differences in practices between different geographic areas? I would argue that the differences are shrinking. So, for example, I know one Northern California association that says, we have to stay independent. We don't want Oakland. We don't want San Jose. We need to serve our members. Is there that much of a practice difference between San Francisco and Oakland, or is there something else going on there?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot going on. I was in Vermont again. What a wonderful state. These are independent thinkers. Small numbers, right? But Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine are all one MLS. So when Alex from Upstream got up on the stage and says inputting into multiple MLSs, they just, for them it was like, we already took care of that problem. Anyway, Danielle, any thoughts on it? You pay all these dues to all these cats and all these associations and all these MLSs. Do you ever feel like ripped off? You see, is it a good deal to have all these little things?
No, and it was funny too because we were having a discussion yesterday at my office, and one of my agents was like, it's so expensive to be a part of the MLS, and I think our dues are like $1,100–1,200 a year. And I'm like, yeah, it might be a good amount of money, but you don't realize all the things you get. And they're like, well, so what? All it gives me is access to the MLS. And me, of course, I'm like, no, you get so many more things. And I don't think the average agent, if they're not involved beyond selling houses, they don't see what happens on the state level, what happens on the national level. They don't see, all the committees behind the scenes that are raising money for RPAC, or, the industry advocacy committee, the fair housing committee. They don't see all of those dollars actually going to work. And I'm lucky. I only have to pay dues to one MLS. So I have no complaints. And even if, I've always said it, and people are probably going to get really mad at me for saying this, but I wish they would raise the dues, because if they raised the dues a little, it would eliminate a lot of those agents that aren't doing business.
I lived through a consolidation in Northern Illinois, and the brokerage here that I work with, Baird Warner, Stephen really helped lead that. And I think you've recognized Stephen's leadership over the years, Brad.
Oh yeah.
All it meant to me as an agent at the time is that instead of filling out 2 legal size forms of little tiny bits and fields, I had to fill out 1. How easy is that? I mean, I don't know why people think they need an identity. Phil, you answer this, through their personal owned MLS.
It's baloney, but I should draw a distinction between MLS consolidation and association consolidation. Danielle's market is the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors, which I used to belong to. And they did it right up there. The associations maintained their independent status. They were Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester are all
Okay.
separate associations, but they all have one large consolidated MLS. Phenomenal way of doing it. So the associations maintained their autonomy. Unfortunately, where I am, it's an incredibly fragmented area where you could drive 30 minutes and be in 3 different MLSs, 3 different associations. So MLS consolidation is a absolute necessity, especially in the democratization of information here, the shrinking of the world. Associations, if they're solvent and if they comply with NAR, I really think it's okay for them to maintain their autonomy. It's not such a big deal. When you have,
I guess the question for you, Phil, do they provide a service? Because you all pay this, like in taxes. Like, there's probably some federal agencies who get to shut down and be fine. I mean, do we really need a gathering spot? Is it ethics enforcement? Is it education?
Yeah, it is.
Then
it's education, it's ethics, and it is political clout. It is lobbying to keep laws off the books or pass laws that support home ownership and do not throw the industry into a tailspin, but because some well-meaning bureaucrat did something with horrendous unintended consequences. These guys that want to, for example, get rid of the mortgage interest deduction because they see all this, theoretical tax revenue, who don't understand that the mortgage interest deduction is one of the things that makes us special. Do we need GSE reform? Does Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac need to reform? Absolutely correct. But the 30-year fixed mortgage, Brad, if we do away with that, we cease to be a special society. We erode what makes us special.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful, and that's one of the great things that RPAC does. And nowhere here did I mention data.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed in the road trip, whether it's a Marin Association or Vermont or wherever it is, these associations, they're also about community. I mean, real estate agents are out there on their own, lone rangers trying to get along, and the community, it's like the Inman community. I don't think I've been in a lot of other industries, and I guarantee you, television and ebooks, there's not the hugs and support for one another and the fun and there's a sense of community that's so strong in real estate. And I think it comes from the roots of that independent agent who is alone and needs that community. And I used to be kind of cynical, but when I see them all gather in a room and the way they're talking and sharing, and I don't know, really kind of touched me. We always learn. I just thought, wow, we need these things. They shouldn't go away entirely. My God, that'd be horrible.
Co-opetition.
Yeah.
We're the only industry where we cooperate with our competition.
Just don't talk about commission. Hey, can we get it? We got a couple, our ace reporter, Teak, who we all love. And Danielle, let's start with you. He's writing something that he really worked hard on, because Teak really works hard to keep the industry, up to speed on what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so he came up with a story, 3 potentially dicey claims realtors should think through carefully. So Danielle, do you have those in front of you?
The 3 of them are: I've got buyers in your area. My services are free to buyers, and it's proven that agents will help your listings, that our listing will sell for more money. My take on those, and obviously one of my core values of my company is authenticity. Be real. I don't like the bait and switch tactics. That's not something I've ever done. It's not something I never ever will do in my marketing in any way. In fact, somebody was talking to me last night about buying a house, and they said, well, do we have to pay you up front? And I said, no, not at all. I said, I was just very straightforward. My commission is paid by the seller. So maybe the consumer will figure out that essentially the commission is coming out of the bottom line of the price and they really are paying for it. But I'm honest and upfront, and I don't say, oh, well, no, my services are free to you. I don't do that kind of stuff. But, it works for some people, but I guess it just depends on what your values are.
Let's tackle that one, Phil and Leslie. Can you say your services are free?
Simply put, Article 12 allows you, Article 12 of the Code of Ethics allows you to use the term free for something that is in fact free. Now, there's some wordsmithing involved here, because at the end of the day, under the traditional business model, a buyer solely pays for the house. They don't pay an extra fee to a buyer agent unless there's a separate compensation agreement with all the informed consent of all parties and so forth. So you have to be very careful about using the word free so long as it does not,
but
it isn't a bait and switch.
We're thinking about buying the house next door, right? So I use my agent. I'm going to pay for everything. I'm going to write a check to get the house, but out of that's going to come the seller's commission and the buyer's commission. So it seems like you also go one step further and say the seller pays the commission, but out of that commission, I get paid, which is bundled into the price of the house. I mean, these are subtle things, but I think a lot of consumers don't know that. I think they're smart enough to figure it out, but that's Pete's point. Is like, why not just go add the last sentence?
In Illinois made buyer broker disclosure mandatory January 1st of 2010. That's disclosure. Many brokerages use that as a way to help their agents say, who are we saying hi to?
Oh, Yaz is getting me coffee. I'm sorry. That was so rude.
I was hoping it was somebody really, like she's going to come on. So I think the right conversation is to say, I work for you as a buyer with an expectation of compensation. In many cases, that compensation is paid by the seller. But if we're going to go stand on the courthouse steps, or we're buying off auction.com, or we're buying Hubzu, or we're buying the neighbor's house, we need an agreement up front as to how I will be compensated. Learning to have that conversation as an agent is incredibly empowering. Because if you get somebody who doesn't recognize your value going into the relationship, I'm not sure that's somebody you really want to work with.
Well, I think
it's
one day. Go ahead, Phil.
It's not just commission. You can offer a free home inspection. You can offer, you can do things which are in fact free. Okay. I think the whole idea of, a buyer agent working for free or no charge to the buyer. Let's remember, we are not leading these innocent little Bambi fawns who've never bought anything more than a refrigerator into this, horrible slaughterhouse of manipulation. These people are buying a goddamn house for 6 and 7 figures, and they ought to know very damn well where the money goes, where it comes from, who's getting paid how. And if an agent does not have a rudimentary buyer consultation about for whom they work, what they will do, how they are paid, then, they deserve whatever consequence they get, up to and including losing the client because they didn't sign them to a buyer broker.
I think you nailed it, but I'm not, you two are the standard people aspire to. I'm not sure those conversations at the level of detail that Teek's talking about occur. And there might be some, misrepresentation. But anyway, let's move to the next one because we're going to run out of time. What do we got next on this list, Danielle, of hot questions?
I've got buyers in your area.
So this one is, I'm selling, you come to list my house and you say, hey, Brad, give me your listing because I've got buyers in this neighborhood, which seems like a pretty innocent, if you're working that neighborhood, you're working with buyers.
You better have a buyer for the house then. You better be able to say, my buyer, Joe Smith, is looking for a house in this criteria. Like, if you don't have that, don't say it. Otherwise, you're a liar.
There's 2 statements there, Danielle. One is, I have buyers for this area. So when you've got a big brokerage website that's been running for years and people have registered to get saved searches, you can go in and you can say, I have 454 people who have registered for a 4-bedroom house in St. Charles priced between $400,000 and $500,000. Is that saying I have buyers in this area? It's saying we know of people who want to buy a house like yours. That's different. I think that's legitimate. And it's different, though, from I have a buyer for this house. I think if you say I have a buyer for this house, you have to hold him up and say it's Joe Smith, and he's going to make a decision by the end of the week. Those are different.
If you've got a $600,000 3-bedroom colonial with a 3-car garage, and you tell people I have a buyer for this, you better damn well have someone that's looking between $600,000 and $700,000 with a minimum of 3 bedrooms in this school district who'd love a 3-car garage, or at least a 2-car garage. You better have one.
Yeah, but so Leslie, I guess my question is like, all right, so you have 454 buyers that have registered in your system. So all of those buyers are actively looking, or are they registered 5 years ago and bought a house and aren't really buyers anymore?
Listen, it's going to be different from database to database. The brokerage I'm talking about scrubs for activity every 90 days. And if there's 2 90-day sequences with no activity, they drop it because it's bad for your spam and undelivered mail kinds of things.
So Article 12, which we just talked about with the free thing, is also covered under this, and we shall present a true picture in our advertising, marketing, and other representations. So if you say you have 400 people registered on your website, you have 400 people registered on your website, or you're out of compliance. If you say you have a buyer who wants to see this house, you know, you better show them the house. You better show up with that
I
buyer.
agree with entirely.
Yeah, I think one part of this could get more and more complicated as we see more and more tech companies offering all these, different models on the buy side and rebates. And then I think increasingly the consumer is going to want to know how it works. And I think that's one reason Teak thought it was important. The last one, maybe
Dan, client, Brad, we're obligated to tell them. If they're a client, we're obligated to tell them.
Yep. Danielle, we're running out of time. Should we hit the last one real quickly and get people's point of view on that one?
Hit it.
Yeah, the last one is, it's proven that agents will help your listing sell for more money.
And by the way, the context here, just so you have a little gang, is Teak looked at all the research to see specifically whether this was always the case, down to micro research in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm not sure why he used that, but he did.
It's a famous study.
Yeah, there was
lovely this time of year too.
So the average, he basically looked at some of the averages that are used aren't very scientific, and he was basically, I think, concluding you better exercise caution here making that claim. And that, I think, is the point of that part of the story. I don't know if any of us would disagree with that, but,
So,
I mean,
I tell a different story.
Okay.
I tell a different story. Yes, there are NAR surveys about, I don't know if they're NRA surveys, but there's certainly NAR surveys about how sellers net on average more money using a broker. There's a lot of data out there, and just setting aside whatever Teak found, which I'm sure is quite valid. I used to, early on in my company, have an alternate business model where we had a side business as a for sale by owner assist company.
Alternate business model.
You said it, ABM. There you go. There was a third
Writing
horn.
it down.
I stopped doing it out of a concern that people are their own worst enemy in the largest transaction of their life. And I saw so much self-destructive and self-sabotaging behavior that I could not take people's money to watch them mess up their lives. We had a guy who, lost $100,000 or more, as I recall, because he didn't understand. He read some internet blog that said he could only go to contract with somebody with a commitment. Well, in the state of New York, you can't get a commitment until you have a contract. This guy was reading like the Vancouver, Canada real estate blog. All right. This guy lost 100 grand, but he saved 3%. Give me a break. So look, banks are smart. Banks cut corners wherever they can. When they take ownership of a property, what do, Brad? Danielle, who do they hire to sell the property? They sell it themselves?
A realtor.
Oh, well, they must net more money then. There's an unscientific economic indicator for you.
Yeah. Part of me worries, the everyday realtor who isn't getting an income, a salary, a 401k, paid vacation, every morning they have to hustle to make money. And the temptation to cut corners to pay their mortgage is overwhelming, I think. And the key here, though, if you're going to be in the business for the long term and you're going to make the money to pay that mortgage and all those bills, take the high road, be ethical, because that's going to be everything that keeps you in business is your reputation. But it's got to be hard for agents. They're not making their nut this month or this quarter. And I don't want to get all satty-eyed about realtors, but I've come to realize it's a hard business for you all.
It is. I think it's a hard business. And I think if there's an agent that might be struggling on how to, convince that for sale by owner to use an agent to sell their house, you don't have to scam them by saying, well, it's going to sell for more money if you sell it with me. Maybe you need to come at it from a different angle, more of like a value proposition is, hey, I might, get you a little bit more money, but more importantly, I know how to market it. I know how to advertise it. I know how to show it. it. I know how to handle the, once an offer comes in and get the deal to close. So you don't have to cut those corners. There's other ways around it.
That's a good wrap, I think, in all of this. Leslie, did you want to make a?
I want to follow up on something you said. In one of the Facebook groups last night, there was an argument over open houses. One of the top 10 arguments. And I said, why are you doing an open house? Oh, to get leads. Well, they're not leads. They're people who want to see the house. A bunch of people jumped in behind me and said, well, it's universal that this happens. I don't believe in some of these universals. I don't believe that we should endorse, well, everybody else is doing it this way, so, or this XYZ script said I should do it this way. I'd rather go to a truly higher standard, which sounds goofy, but I believe it, genuinely.
Okay, gang. Hey, I don't want to make this a commercial, but I will, insofar as we have both these two wonderful characters and Danielle, all three of them on the stage at Connect in New York. This is the caliber of people that we look up to, that we like to put a shining light on, to lead the way in a very complex, difficult industry. For all the people that are out there trying to make it every day, you all three are guiding lights. We're going to have you on stage talking about all kinds of fun stuff. We got some really great speakers. And so we'll have you there for sure, gang. And then also, I think, Danielle, these were two of our best that we've had. I felt like this was a really steady, intelligent conversation about some gnarly issues. Because, by the way, gang, we're trying to find our voice in this new product launch, and we don't want to kill it. We want to tweak it and improve it. So I think this, for me at least, Danielle, was a good show.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you guys for coming on. Are either of you going to be at NAR?
Are you going to NAR, gang?
Nope.
All conference staff for the year. Got to get ready for Christmas and everything else.
There you go.
You
Thanks
guys have
a lot.
fun.
Hey, partner Danielle.
I don't want to be hungover at Inman.
Yeah, there you go.
Sounds good.
Hey, by the way, next week, Danielle is going to do it live from NAR with some big shot from NAR, but we're going to start a half an hour late. So we're going to start at 9:30, which is 12:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Pacific time, and 11:30 Central time. And in Europe, it's, I don't know when that is, about 6 o'clock in Paris. But so we will be starting late. Amrit will get the word out to everybody. A big thank you, shout out to our producer, Amrit, on the Inman team, and to these wonderful guests. I love the industry. I love my readers. I love you all. Bye, bye, bye.
Thank